Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a phenomenal woman that I recently had the pleasure of connecting with across the social media lines. She is a business coach, a brand strategist. She's a mom, but her most important title is she's a woman of God, and she's taken time out of her very busy schedule to hang out with us for a little while to share a little bit of her journey, a little bit of her story with the hopes of encouraging and inspiring and uplifting us, particularly as it pertains to dealing with the adversities and challenges of life. So it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our special guest this evening, Miss Timera LaChae. Tamara, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we jump into our segments this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little snippet about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do. Kind of give our audience a taste of who is Timera LaChae.
Awesome. So I am Timera LaChae. I'm from the state of Georgia. I am an entrepreneur. I own Increase Marketing and Consulting, also known as Increase Global Enterprises. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 19 years old. And so entrepreneurship is basically in my blood. It's in my DNA. And growing up, my dad owned about 7 businesses. So
Mm.
by 15 years old, I was doing his payroll. I was managing. He taught me how to train. So it's kind of like in my blood. So I help a lot of individuals in that area. When it comes to God, I've been walking with God all my life. I've been hearing the voice of God since I was 8 years old. And so I'm just honored by God because I'm very grateful for his presence. I'm very grateful for who he is when it comes to my life. I am a mother of 2 amazing sons, a 3-year old and a 6-year old. But one of the things I help people do is I help them increase their faith and help bring their visions to reality.
That is awesome. That is awesome. When I had a chance to check out a little bit about you before I officially reached out, I knew right away, just in the early goings of seeing what you were about, and not only in business but in your faith walk with God, that you would be an excellent addition to the show. And again, I'm thankful that you accepted this opportunity to be here, and I know I'm going to be blessed, and my listeners are as well. So, with that said, I'm not going to waste any more time. We're going to jump right into this and get to learn a little bit more about you and your story. So, Tamara, when I bring people on the show, one of the things that I like to take a few moments to do is as you're sharing your story, as you're sharing your journey, I really believe it's critically important for us to take out a few moments to reflect back on the beginnings of where it all starts, because a lot of things that go on early on in life, as far back as childhood, we may although we may not realize it at the time, there's a connection between those events and those encounters that we have to fast forwarding to what you're doing in your life, as you walk in your purpose that God has intended for you. And so I don't like to, I don't want to overshadow that or dismiss that. And I think it's really critical to kind of connect those dots, because I think it all makes sense in the path that we have to go through, the, again, highs and lows, whatever they may be, so that we can be trained up and prepared, by God to be able, again, to walk in that purpose and live out the life that he created us to do. So with that said, if you would, take us back to those early days, to the beginning of your story, and share with us what was it like for you growing up, fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there's any challenges that you care to share, you can do that as well. Kind of give us the foundational basis of where your story begins.
Awesome. Thank you. So growing up, I actually struggled with pretty much everything.
Hmm.
So I struggled with pretty much everything. But one of the things my mother always believed that if you start something, you finish it. And so, even though I struggled, I wanted to do a lot of things. And I stand 6'3" in height. So I didn't want to play basketball, but everybody wanted me to play basketball. And so I started my journey of playing basketball in high school. And the truth be told, when I first shot my first basket, it was actually in the wrong basket. I'm left handed, right? But I was trained right handed, so it made me both handed. But through the journey, I've dealt with the bullying, I've dealt with the, being talked about and things like that, because one of the things was me personally, I struggled, right? And so because I struggled, that came with laughter from people. But one of the things is my mother and my dad, they weren't married. But they both were motivational and inspirational. So motivation was a part of what they do, right? And it still is a part of what they do. Now, I was not brought up in the church though. So I was brought up knowing who God is. So growing up, my mother would drop us off at my grandmother's house, and my grandmother would have us calling on the name of Jesus from the time she dropped us off to the time we fell asleep. And then when we would wake up, she would have a pencil and a paper near us, and she'll say, "Now write the name of Jesus." Well, most of my cousins and I, they didn't want to be like, they didn't want to come over there all the time, but for some reason, I was really drawn to my grandmother. I remember being 8 years old. We was in her living room. It was me, my uncle, my aunt, and my grandmother, and I opened the Bible, and I had an encounter with the Holy Spirit. And ever since then, I've been hearing the voice of God. And so during that journey, when I turned about 12 years old, my mother joined a Church of Christ. And it was there that I got baptized, but we were only there for like a year. That's it. So I came to the assumption that we were there so I could get baptized, right? And so we did that. Now, through my journey, I've always prayed. I don't know. I always say it was the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit gave me wisdom to pray for my parents at a very, very young age. And so I would pray and I would speak and decree things, but I would always tell my mother what it is that I spoke, what it is that I prayed for. And we would watch it manifest. And it kept happening, and it continued to happen, and it continued to happen. So when I got in high school, my mother said these words to me. She said, "You're going to have to be very careful with your words, because I'm noticing that what you say comes to reality. And so I'm going to need you to make sure you're never angry." So my mother told me that. And so I'm trying to learn how to play the game of basketball, and I'm doing all kind of other things too now. I'm doing, and I'm failing at it. I'm horrible at it, right? Because I'm struggling. And then I turned 18 years old, and it clicks. Every single thing clicks, all because my mother wouldn't let me quit. I wanted to quit, but she would say, "No, you started it, you're going to finish it." So by the time I turned 18, every single thing I was doing, it clicked for me. And so I was able to get a basketball scholarship on the collegiate level. And my journey kind of went on from there. And one of the things is, I got to go back. When I got into the ninth grade, my mother had a conversation with me. And the conversation was, you got one or two options. Either you can get in high school, you can date, and you can just go through high school, or you can get in high school and don't date until you're 18, and I'll give you the high school experience you desire. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be wild, because people gonna look at me like, what? But I made the decision to wait until I was 18 to start dating. And because of that, I was I had clarity on who I was.
Mm.
So I had clarity on who I was. And by the time I turned 18, I knew that I wanted to wait until marriage. I knew I wanted to be a virgin that waited until marriage by 18. So that journey happened, and then I went to college on the collegiate level, and I started as a freshman. I became captain my sophomore year, and then from there, I'm a person of faith. So the Lord came to me sophomore year. And the Lord said, "Come up with a saying. Tell your teammates before the season started that I told you this. Y'all gonna go undefeated and win the SIC championship." And I was like, "You want me to what?" And so, of course, I told my teammates, and they laughed at me. They said, "You're crazy. Like, first of all, you're not gonna say this saying before every game." And I remember we were playing the number one team in the conference, Kentucky State University. And my coach said, "Does anyone have anything to say?" And I said, "I do." And I said the saying, and I said it every game, and we went undefeated and won the SIC championship. So, so I'm in my mind, we're gonna do it again the following year. My coach, the same year, my coach tells my teammates and I that by the time I graduate, I should be able to play anywhere overseas. Because even though I'm 6'3", I shot threes too, even though I'm a post player. It was almost like I wanted to do something that people said I couldn't do. Now, a
Mhm.
highlight of my basketball career was freshman year. Freshman year, I remember we were winning, and I got the ball at the 3-point line, and everybody in the stands was like, "Shoot it, shoot it." And I looked at my coach like, "Can I shoot this?" And he gave me the nod, yes, and I shot it. It was nothing but net, and everybody in the stands just stood up. And we got in the locker room, and my coach said, "I've been coaching over 20 some years, and a center freshman has never shot a 3-point shot." And from there, he started to create plays around that. And so that was an amazing experience for me, especially as a freshman. I believe, number one, I was told in high school that I wouldn't start as a freshman because I wasn't the best player until it clicked,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I felt like I spoke it. I spoke it to my teammates in high school. I'm gonna start as a freshman. They laughed at me and they said, "You're Tamira, you're gonna redshirt." But God opened that door and gave me the opportunity to start as a freshman. I'm truly grateful for that. So then I get ready to come back next season, which is junior year. And the Lord says, give up your scholarship and start a 5-day Bible study. And I
Mm.
was like, do what? Like, I can do a lot of things, but I'm not doing that. Like, I love you. I can't do that, God. I got so much that I want to do. Like, my coach said I can play anywhere by the time I graduate. I believe that. And so I messed around, and for 30 days, I dreamed teaching the word of God. And you got to realize I wasn't in the church. Okay. So I wasn't in a church, and God spoke this to me. And then it's like he snatched the gift from me. So I struggled. I was like, what is going on? What is going on? So I went into my coach's office and I said, and by the way, my coach said if anybody ever quit, they can never play for him again. They can never play for him again. I went in there with tears in my eyes and I was like, I got something to say and this is going to hurt because I was a captain, right? So I wasn't just a player, I was captain of the team. And I said, for some reason, the Lord wants me to start a Bible study, and there's no way I can do this Bible study and play for you at the same time. And my coach said to me, Tamir, for some reason, I knew you were not going to play this season.
Mm.
And I was like, what? So I started a 5-day Bible study. I didn't know what I was doing. I picked a classroom in the science building on D4 Valley State University campus. And it started with one person. And it grew within a 30 to 60 day span. It grew to 30 some students coming every single day, Monday through Friday. And I would let God use me. And I would just say, God, have your way. And from there, 5 homosexuals got delivered, 2 sex addicts, and an unbeliever. And I was like, God, what is going on? Because you got to realize during this time, people told me I was stupid. They told me I was crazy. They said, God don't speak like that. But I've been hearing God's voice since I was 8 years old. And I'm like, no, God told me to do this. Well, when I got done with 2 semesters of that, the Lord said, now I want you to go back and play basketball. I can go back and play basketball. My coach is not going to have it. So I'm walking on campus, right? I'm walking
Mm-hmm.
on campus. I was like, why can't I just do the Bible study? The Lord said, because I never want you to lose sight of me. So I need you to rest.
Mm.
And I was like, what? Now this is the Holy Spirit talking to me. The Holy Spirit is like, I never want you to lose sight of me. You got to always remember, I'm going to use you, then I'm going to sit you down. I'm going to use you, then I'm going to sit you down. I'm going to use you, and I'm going to sit you down because I need you to always put me first. And so I'm walking on campus to the old student center, and Coach Bartley is coming up, and he says, Tamara, how have you been? And I'm like, I'm great. Are you still doing that Bible study thing? And I was like, no, Coach. And he said, I need you to come back and play. I need you to come back and play. And my teammates, that didn't sit good with them because they remembered
Mm-hmm.
what he said. But we won another SIC championship. So, that's just a snippet and as short as I can put it, that journey of the beginning for me, really.
Wow, I absolutely love that. Love that story. And there's so much to unpack from it. Just the fact, like you said, I was hearing from God at a very early age, even though technically I wasn't actively in fellowship in terms of going to church on a regular basis. That wasn't my thing, but yet God is talking to me. And then one of the other things that stands out to me is about your parents, particularly you saying your mom was emphasizing to you about you don't quit, you don't give up. If you start something, you finish. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how challenging, because you repeated multiple times about I was failing at everything. It seemed like no matter what it was that you tried, you just weren't. It just wasn't clicking. You just weren't. It just wasn't happening for you. And I think that speaks volumes to who God is in the sense that He wants us that even when the road is getting tough, even when the challenges and the obstacles are before us, if He has something set for you to do, He wants you to just keep pressing for it, and trusting Him, and eventually. as it was the case in your story, eventually things click, eventually things line up. And so I love your story, because it just in this very intro part of it, because you are speaking, oozing in resilience, oozing in just pressing forward despite the odds, despite the naysayers, people, the voices out there that are saying, oh, you'll never be this, or they're putting their limits on you, they're putting their caps on you as to what you can and you cannot be, looking at you crazy, making fun of you, things of that nature. But you never, I'm sure, in your human condition, it obviously impacts you, but you didn't let it disrupt you moving forward.
Right.
You stuck with it, and God provided. God showed you what happens when you stick with Him, when you're obedient and you follow the path in spite of all the other things that are going on. So, and this is why I like to have this intro conversation to kind of connect the dots, because you couldn't do the works that you're doing today
Right.
if you had not gone through that experience and learned very early the importance of standing firm against that storm, facing those valley experiences of life head on, and not running from it, but running to it, and saying, you know what, I'm gonna stand tall and know that God is going. He's not going to lead me astray. He's not telling me anything wrong. I'm going to stick with that, and that's why you've been able to do the things and continue to do the things that you're doing right now, as you help different people in their businesses with business strategies and branding and things of that nature. So, such a powerful story. And then just again, what God has for you, He has for you, and your obedience allowed you to not only do a good work in the sense of starting the Bible studies, but then the very thing that was already spoken out there about what that would never happen. You quit on a team and you get to come back.
Right.
You didn't even have to ask to come back. You were asked to come
Yes.
back. So that, to me, that even speaks even stronger volumes to how God moves. He'll have them ask you to come. You won't have to go grovel back and say, can I come back to the team? And they'll come looking for you. And then you came back and picked up right where you left off. It was like you didn't even miss a beat. Another championship under your belt. So, I mean, that's just a beautiful, beautiful story, beautiful way to start this conversation. So I appreciate you sharing that. So powerful. And then the one last thing that I want to capture, I love the fact that, and I guess we can kind of, unfortunately, in these days and times, it's kind of an old school mentality of the sense of you saying to yourself, I value myself, I see worth in myself, and as a result, I'm going to wait.
Right.
I'm going to stay and wait in terms of I'm going to wait until I get married before I have sex. I'm going to wait until it wasn't until you were 18, as you said, to before I even start dating. That it's about priorities, and it's about you again understanding your worth and your value. And so for any of our young female listeners, or those or mothers of young ladies, please take what Timera is saying here, and instill, if you're not already, instill that into your young girls, that they understand that they are valuable, that they are worth waiting for, because you just don't see that. I mean, I have a daughter myself, and thank God, she's adhered to that path, and I pray that she will do similar as you did. Wait until that special one, in accordance the way God would have her to do that. It makes such a difference, and it means so much. But more importantly, it like you said, it helped you to identify who you were.
Right.
You didn't have to wait for somebody to dictate that to you. You knew who you were. You knew what your standing is. You knew what you brought to the table. And if somebody was going to either be on board or they weren't going to be on board with it, and that was just what it was. You weren't wavering. You weren't going to sell yourself short. You weren't going to take less. You weren't going to settle. And so we need more of that messaging. So I appreciate you, for that decision, and you sticking to it, because again, we need more of that in our young ladies, in particular, in our young black women of today, young ladies coming up. Yes, own that value, because you are descendants of royalty. You are
Yes.
queens. So walk like one and act like one. And if that brother can't handle that, then that's his loss. It's not yours. So appreciate that. Appreciate that. So Tamara, as you shared, wonderful childhood, some obstacles, some challenges, but you stuck with God along the way, and He helped you overcome those things. But as you embark into your adulthood, those challenges still come, those storms still come, and every now and then, truth be told, if you live long enough, we find ourselves facing some challenges that hit us a little different in a way that we may question. Even those of us who walk in faith, under normal circumstances, question, how am I going to get out of this one?
Right.
This is a little bit heavier. This is a little bit weightier than what I'm normally accustomed to. Me just praying and hoping that it go away isn't just quite working like that. So if you would share with us a time that's exactly the situation that you find yourself in, a storm that you didn't see a way out, you didn't see a way through, you had your doubts, your fears, your concerns as to how you were going to overcome it. We can again trust God that he delivered you through it, because you're here today to even share the story. But maybe back then you had your doubts, you had your second guessing, if you will, those fears or those anxieties. So if you would kind of walk us through what this particular experience was like for you, and what was ultimately the turning point where you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of that situation.
Okay, so if I gotta talk about a challenging moment, it would actually be a total of 10 years. So it'd
Okay.
be 10 years. So when it comes to the church, I've been ministering the gospel since I was 18, by the way. So
Okay.
when I wasn't in school, I would do tours and I would preach all over the East Coast, right? And some people are like, how did you do that? You weren't in church. Well, I'm a motivational speaker. So they would find me in schools and they'll say, I need you to come to the church and speak to my youth. So my
Okay.
journey started, and then the pastors there, and they would say, come to my, and they never asked me who my pastor was until after I was done. So,
Mm.
and I was like, hey, I know the word of God. Because when I was 13 years old, I asked my mother to buy me a Bible. That's the only thing I wanted for my birthday, right? So I know the word of God. So 21, 2021, the Lord spoke to me and said, I'm going to take you to the lost and I need your help. I want to use you as a vessel. Well, I thought that meant I was going to the streets. I'm not from the streets. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
the streets? It's not for everybody. It's not for me. And the Lord said, no, I'm going to take you into the church. And
Hmm.
I was like, I didn't understand that. Had no idea. So 2021, I was doing a tour. I was in Columbus, Ohio, and a Caucasian pastor prophesied on me. He said, you're going to marry a pastor. And I said, the devil just used this man. I'm not marrying a pastor. I don't even go to church. I'm not going to church every Sunday. I'm just being real.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, dude, you had me until you said that. So 24, I was doing a tour, and on a tour, it was a lady. I loved her presence. I loved how God used her. I love her classiness. I was like, I'm going to join my first church, right? So I joined, and that was the first time that I experienced control because I was told to cancel the rest of my tour.
Hmm.
And I was like, why would I cancel my tour? And I was told, because I'm your leader now, and that's what I told you to do. And from this day forward, God will now talk to me concerning you before he talks to you. So I was told that 24 years old, and I was like, why would God talk to you before he talks to me? I don't need confirmation. And she was like, you got a lot to learn. I realized you wasn't brought up in the church. You got a lot to learn. And then I said, well, if I cancel my tour, I would be disobeying God because God is the one that told me to do it. And she said, well, this is protocol and you're going to have to do what I tell you to do. And my words to her, 24 years old, I knew God before I knew you.
Mm.
And I can't disobey God. I can do a lot of things, but I can't do that. And of course, I was called rebellious. And I was like, what? So that journey started. But then I left there, went to another church, same year, went to another church, helped that church build. They actually came to my mother's job because in my city, a lot of people knew I've always sung, by the way. So I was
Mm-hmm.
a praise, like I write music, I write gospel music. So when I did the tour, I would also do praise and worship, all that stuff. So a lot of people knew about that in my hometown. Everybody pretty much knew me because of my parents. They were really good at that. So they came to my mom's job and said, we hear that Timera's back in town. We need her help. We're getting ready to launch this church and we need help growing it, right? And so I went, and that's exactly what I did. I helped them grow the church. I was excited. I was always there praying and all that kind of stuff because I love God. I've always loved God.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Lord spoke to me and said, now you're only here temporary. I'm going to actually give you the go when to leave. The Lord told me this from the jump. And so I'm in it. I'm loving it. I'm doing all these different things. And people began to prophesy on me. But when they were prophesying, it didn't make sense to me, right? Because the Lord said, I'm leaving. And I kid you not, the Lord said, it's time to go. I wasn't just leaving. I was leaving the city. Okay.
Mm.
I was leaving the city. The Lord said, it's time for you to go. And so I'm leaving the city, and the Lord said, I want you to call this lady you did a play for, and you're going to ask her, can you stay with her while you prepare to get your own place and all that kind of stuff. So I did. And she ended up, Dr. Clarice Johnson, she ended up letting me stay with her. And she showed me, she said, you're going to share rooms with my daughter. Well, there was a room next door to it, and it had nothing in it. I said, what's in that room? She said, nothing. I said, I want that room. I'm going to sleep on your floor. She said, you going to what? I said, I'm going to sleep on your floor because I'm going to be out your house in 30 days. That's the only way I'm going to get out. I cannot be comfortable. In 30 days, I'm going to be out your house. And in 30 days, I was out of her house. She said, I've never met anybody like you. I said, I get that a lot. So then I'm doing what I do. People are still pulling on me, right? They're pulling on me because they know, like they know that God uses me. But at this time, I'm not in the church anymore. And I'm getting ready for another tour, right? So I'm getting ready for another tour. And this pastor DMs me on Facebook and he says, call me. We would love for you to come to our church. So I ended up calling him. And then, no, he ends up calling me. And while we're talking, he says, God is so good. He's brought me my wife. And I said, who? Who's your wife? And he said, you. Oh, no, I'm not your wife. Because even though I was waiting, I wasn't in a hurry to get married.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I had just got out of a 2.5-year relationship. And that was the thing. I think the relationships that I were in, they respected me. All right. They respect me so much. I definitely say you can do anything you put your mind to. And so I was like, I'm over this. Because I was like, we were supposed to get married. Like, I'm over this. And see, my 2.5-year relationship, he wanted to marry me 2 weeks in. And I was like, I'm not doing that. That's absolutely insane. And so I actually, this pastor, I met him the day after my birthday. And then we scheduled to meet face to face. And I was like, okay, we're meshing here. And so we began to preach together. He's an apostle, by the way. We began to preach together, and everybody kept calling us husband and wife. And I was like, I'm not married. Like, what are y'all, where's this coming from? So then I started getting prophecies. That's your husband. That's your husband. And it kept coming. It's like nonstop prophecy after prophecy. And I'm like, I don't want a pastor. Like, why do y'all keep telling me that this is my husband? I don't want a pastor, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why can't we just be friends? We do ministry, stuff like that. And so we're preaching the gospel, we're doing all this. And I told him, I said, I don't do relationships anymore. I'm just going to get married. Like, I told him this because he was like, no, I don't do relationships. When it's time for me to get married, I'm just going to get married. Like, and so 3 months in, he was getting ready to propose to me. 3 months. Mm. I was like, and I'm not a person that's into surprises. So he was like, I know you're not into surprises, but I'm going to propose to you at the end of May. You know what? You're going to propose to me. Like, it's only 3 months. What? And so a situation happened where he couldn't do it. And my mother said, something isn't right. And I went into prayer and the Lord said, remember when I told you that I was going to take you to the lost? And I was like, yeah. The Lord said, this is where I'm taking you. And everything that I've used you for in the past, I've prepared you for this. I want you to understand that you're about to have a Hosea and Gomer experience. Mm. Now, I'm a virgin. Now, that doesn't make sense to me. And I'm like, God, why would that? Why? He said, because you remember when you were 19 years old, you got down on your knees and you said, God, take choice from me. Whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. You made that commitment to me, and now I'm going to use you. And everything that you're about to experience is going to be for my glory. When you don't understand, I want you to remember that everything that I'm doing is for my glory, and I'm going to cover you along the way. Now, I'm at this time I had to be like 26, right? So the Lord is revealing this to me. I was not in full agreement. I tried for like 5 years to make sure that this did not happen, by the way. I left the state of Georgia. I was like, no. The prophecies kept coming. There were a total of over 100 people that prophesied over my life. And none of them, a lot of them were not affiliated with each other. But everybody kept telling me, this is my husband. I was like, there's no way. I mean, he's my friend. I get that. But why do I have to marry him? And so I went down the journey and I left. We went our separate ways because I was trying so hard to make this thing not happen. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, no. During that journey, there was a lot of discouragement though, but most importantly, there was a lot of disappointments because I encountered a lot of leaders, whether I looked up to them, whether they were huge of influence, and I saw things that I should have never saw. And I didn't understand it because I wasn't brought up in the church. So I was very naive. My mindset was, if you got a relationship with God, it looks like my relationship with God. We obey God. That's what we do. And so I didn't understand it. I was like, God. So I was one of those people, if you did wrong, I corrected you. But then I learned if you're not at a certain level, you have no business correcting. So I was told several times, you're an evangelist. You don't correct a pastor, prophet, or an apostle, nor bishop. And I was like, well, if nobody's correcting you, then what about your soul? And they would say, you just got to follow protocol. I really don't understand this. So I'm just supposed to just let y'all do this. So I was called rebellious a lot, right? And so the journey went on. So when I we ended up getting married. We ended up getting married. And when I got married, I got pregnant with my son, which is a junior. And that journey was very interesting because I had a young lady that walked with me. She went everywhere with me. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
everywhere I went, she went. And she met my entire family. So my grandmother got 10 living children. She met them, their children, everybody. So I began to preach or go places while he preached. And people would prophesy and say, you're having twins. And I was like, no, I'm not having twins. I'm only having one. They'll say, you're having twins. Well, what it was a young lady that was walking beside me when everywhere that I went, she was pregnant. And she was pregnant with my husband's baby.
Mm.
Yeah. She was pregnant with his baby. And I when I found out because I was at a place for my brother, which I'm his guardian, and I ran into our best friend. And our best friend used to be a part of my church because I used to have my own church before I got married. And so she felt guilty. She DM'd me on Facebook and she said, I feel guilty. And I got to tell you this. But the young lady that I'm referring to, she plotted the whole thing. She planned the whole thing. She wanted your life. And I was like, what? That's crazy. Why would she want my life? I'm nice. She pretty much get whatever I get. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
very nice to her. And so the young lady, she ended up living with us because she told me that her sister's fiance tried to rape her. And
Mm-hmm.
so I said, go stay with your mother. She said, I can't because the man that my mother is with molested me. And
Mm-hmm.
so her mother was like, can you please take my daughter in? Blah, blah, blah. So I ended up taking her daughter in. But what I found out was all of those were lies. And it was just a way to get in the door. Right. And so I was angry. I was angry. I had never battled with unforgiveness a day of my life. Like I believe that forgiveness is a gift. So it's nothing for me to forgive. And but in that moment, my blood was boiling. Like I was angry. I think I was more angry at the fact that you plotted this and I've done
Mm-hmm.
nothing but good to you. So I'm trying to speed it up. But So I was angry. And I remember her mother had drove an hour and a half to the church, and she sat in the pews, and I walked out, and her mother walked out behind me, and she said, please do not let go of my daughter. My daughter needs you. You're an inspiration to her. Yeah, please, I know what has happened, but you've helped my daughter, all these things. And I'm looking at her like, and I say to her, I don't know how y'all do it in the church, but I'm not with this. And I said, me and you are no longer friends. Me and your daughter are no longer friends. And she said, are you serious? She said, I've experienced this. You experienced this. That ain't got nothing to do with me, you know? And I said, just because you've experienced it doesn't mean nothing. It's not right. And I'm not finna accept your daughter because that's what you want me to do. And I was angry. And I said some words. Remember, I told you my mom said, be careful. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was angry and I said some words because my blood was boiling. And I went back home. I went into prayer and I said, God, I don't know what this is, but I feel like something is trying to consume me and take over me. And I feel like there's some darkness that's trying to hit my life. And God, tell me what to do. And the Lord spoke to me. And the Lord said, this is the first time you're ashamed. And because you're ashamed, you're not willing to expose. You're not willing to release it. And the Lord said, if you really want to let it go, you got to tell somebody.
Mm.
And I was like, I got to tell somebody. Everybody knows her. Like, and the Lord said, if you want to release it, you got to release it. And so about 2 weeks in, I hated the feeling. I didn't like the way it felt. So what I did, I picked up the phone. I called someone. I said, I'm about to tell you something. I don't want you to judge. I don't want you to get angry, but I need to get this out of me. And I called 3 people. And I did it. I said it. By the time I got to the third person, it lifted off of me.
Mm-hmm.
Lifted off of me. So then I started to have dreams about her. And I was like, why do I keep having these dreams, God? And God said, in due season, you'll know. And so it got to the last dream. In the dream, I looked at her and I felt sorry for her. And I realized hurt people and traumatic people hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt sorry for her and I didn't have another dream. So I did not know that that was the process of journey. And don't get me wrong, I want you to understand that in that I wanted to leave. I was like, I can't do this. Like, no, this ain't it. And the Lord said, the assignment is not up. I need you to keep going. I was like, God, why though? You know? And so it kept going, different things after different things, but my response had changed. And so it was more women, more babies. And I would encourage, I would tell people, you need to be healed because how in the world are you involved with a married man? How in the world are you in the church and you're on the praise and worship team and you're okay with that? How in the world? All these things. But at the same time, I'm shocked because I'm not brought up in the church. So I'm confused. Even through this, I'm still confused because I'm like, God, what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord said, remember when you did the Bible study, people got delivered for real and there was no residue. I want you to look around. People are saying that they're delivered, but they got so much residue. They got so much residue. And the Lord said to me, Timera, what did you do differently? And I began to meditate. And the Lord said, you held them by the hand and you took them through the process until it was completed.
Mm.
And the Lord said, I'm showing you why my people are not being delivered fully. And I'm showing you the causes, the things that occur because of it. 2022, I'm speeding up. 2022, I'm in the presence of God. The Lord said, your assignment is up. I'm about to give you the desires of your heart. Tears begin to fall from my face. I thought I was getting a divorce in 2022. You got to realize through this process, I'm questioning God because you got to realize I was a virgin until I was 28 years old. So I'm confused because I'm like, I waited. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and then people will tell you that's not how God works. Well, I've been on assignment since I was 18, so it is how God works in my life. And some people will say, well, he committed adultery so you could have left. Gomar did too, but God kept telling Hosea to go back and get her. for a reason because there was a purpose behind it. So I'm thinking 2022, I'm done. Boom. The Lord said, no, I want you to focus on you. Because I helped him build a funeral home because that was his dream. So I helped him build a funeral home, successful funeral home, all these things. And so I start focusing on me. My business went to another level, all these things. But even in my mind, I'm like, is this real? I know what I heard, but is it real? And all I did was focus on myself. Well, 2024, divorce, right? Because I'm sitting on my bed. Let me backtrack. I'm at a conference. I had stopped doing praise and worship for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm with one of my friends. She's a prophetess, and she says, I'm getting ready to do a conference. Can you do praise and worship? I said, you know how many people I've turned down? But the Lord is telling me to tell you yes. So I'm gonna do it. So we're at the conference. We're on the third day. An old lady, she had to be like between 60 and 70 years old. She comes in the conference late. She comes in the conference late. She sits down. The conference is almost over. It's over. She gets up. She started praising. She started doing her little dance, praising God. The musicians started playing behind her. She walks up to me and said, I don't know if you're married or single, but God got a man for you. And he's going to make you so happy. And I was like, why did lady just say that in front of the whole church? Like, and so everybody was like, she's out of order. She's out of order. I knew it was God because I've never boxed God in. So I've learned that God is not one to be boxed in because he's supernatural. So he doesn't do what the natural, what we want
Mm-hmm.
in the natural. That's not how it works. So the conference ends, right? I'm sitting on my bed. The Lord speaks to me and said, he got the administrative assistant who's a praise and worship leader at her church. She doesn't go to his church. She goes to her own church, pregnant. Administrative assistant at a funeral home, pregnant. The Lord speaks to me. I pick up the phone and I call him. And he says, what are you talking about? Goes off on me, hang up the phone. And he never comes back. I go to the lawyer and I file the divorce.
Mm.
I wasn't hurt. I praised God. Because what I didn't know was 2022, when he told me to focus on me, he had pulled out every ounce of hurt, every
Mm-hmm.
ounce of pain. I left with joy. And I always tell people, when people are like, your story is powerful, I say, no, not to me. My story is very disappointing to me because tell people that are in the church, right? Like it's different if I would have got with an athlete, I could have made it make sense. You know, I got with a ball player, I can make that make sense. I didn't quite understand it. But what I learned was there there are leaders who are hurting, who have dealt with trauma that have not been healed. People say
Mm-hmm.
that they're wolves in sheep clothing. I say no. They're sheep that were trained by wolves in sheep clothing.
Mm.
They were never supposed to be shepherds, but they became shepherds. And I learned that through the process. And it wasn't just with my ex-husband. It was with a lot of leaders. I didn't just see this with him. I saw this with a lot of leaders. And I said, God, what was this for? And the Lord said, I'm about to use you now. I didn't want to be used, by the way. I came out of it. I'm done. I'm done. I'm going to do me. And the Lord said, no, because then all of it would be in vain. No, now I'm about to use you. And now I focus on people getting healed for real. So that would be the challenge that I would say I went through, like that caused a lot of back and forth with God. Yeah.
Wow. Um, Let me first, of course, start off by saying thank you for your transparency and sharing that. Uh, having gone through something like that can't be easy to talk about, but at the same time, to your point, it shows how your healing process has gone. The fact that you are able to talk about it and talk about it at the length that you're able to talk about it without it breaking you down and tearing you up. And then that is the beauty behind forgiveness.
Yes.
The whole story that you told about it just reeks of what forgiveness is, the significance of forgiveness, because it's the trigger to the healing. You
Right.
can't begin to heal if you don't have an opportunity to forgive. And one of the things that whenever I get into conversations about forgiveness, I like to always remind our listeners is that forgiveness doesn't mean that you are condoning the behavior. It
Right.
doesn't mean that you're saying that that was okay.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't okay. It was not okay what your husband did. It was not okay what the young lady did, or anybody else who misled, misrepresented, or anything of that nature to gain some type of advantage against you. That was not okay. But if you truly want to heal, if you want to begin to move forward in that process, you have to start by being open to just forgiving that person, because understanding that the forgiveness was never for them anyway, it was for you.
That's it.
And in doing that, that's when, as you stated, the supernatural power of God can step in, and he can heal you in ways that you couldn't even fathom or imagine. And he'll use what you might consider to be unorthodox methods to do it. You don't have to understand the pathway of the healing, but you at least, but it does require you to take that first step to ignite the process, and then from there it's your trusting in God to lead you accordingly, and you going along with what he says. Again, even if it doesn't,
Right.
it doesn't sound right to you. Your specific verbiage that you spoke about, that where you said, you've always been one who didn't believe in putting God in a box. I don't believe in boxing God in. That's not who he is, and you can't, because that's, again, he's God. I mean, he's gonna his ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts, and he's gonna always come up with a game plan, a strategy, a way through that it's just gonna be beyond human understanding. But if you understand who he is, and his that he's unlimited in his wisdom, unlimited in his authority, unlimited in his love for you, then that's what should be your trigger that says to you, okay, I can trust in you, even when I can't trust nobody else.
Right.
I can rely upon you even when I can't rely upon nobody else. Even if you say something to me that just clearly does not make sense, I can give you the benefit of the doubt because of who you are. Because last time I checked, you've never made a mistake. Last time I checked, you were the perfect one when it comes to attention to all the details, both now and moving forward. So you going along with that, even though you had your, like you said, and I love that too, because you didn't stray away from saying that you had some challenges in between. I had some struggles with, kind of going along with what God was saying, because it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But you never resisted. Ultimately, you kind of went, you made a decision. I'm going to keep moving forward, just as you were taught all the way back in the beginning, as we shared at the top of the show, that this was always put into you. You don't give up, no matter how things get tough, no matter how it goes. You always finish what you start,
Yeah.
and God was preparing you for that. He's been preparing you all along for this very moment. And I like the fact that you pointed that out, because a lot of times people don't understand that the preparation process doesn't necessarily happen in the moment of the hardship. It's
Right.
been going on in some cases for years. You may not have been aware of it, you may not have known it, but yeah, he's been working on you all along for something that you didn't even know was going to happen 10, 15, 20 years ahead in your life. He was preparing you for that moment, not only the storm that you were going to go through, but how he was going to use that storm and transition it into you being equipped to be a blessing to other people,
Right.
even some of the same people who hurt you, even some of the same people, because God will do that. But if
Yeah.
you allow him to do it, even like I said, because you can't pick and choose when it comes to forgiveness. I can't just forgive, or I just can't like the people who are nice to me, or who never really did a lot of nothing bad to me. Forgiveness has to be across the board. We just can't just be selective like that. Because think about it, if we want to be forgiven for the stuff that we've done, because we've all done some stuff that we want to get that forgiveness for too. Thank God that he's not selective and picking and choosing which ones he wants to forgive and which ones he doesn't, because you might not make that cut. I've done my share of things. You've done your share of things. We all have. That he would have every just cause to overlook us and say, "No, I'm not going to forgive that." But he doesn't do that. So what we ask and want from him, we got to be willing to do that in return, if we call ourselves, followers of Christ. If we're saying that we trust in him and we believe in what he says and what he stands on. So again, I love your transparency and how you're sharing it, because such a power, like you said, it's not about it being a powerful story, but it's a powerful lesson that you're giving us tonight, in your own personal journey. So I appreciate you sharing as you have, because this is definitely something needed, and we can't talk enough about the importance of forgiveness and the connection it has to one's ability to heal. I don't care what you're going through, what you've been through, what In your human condition, yeah, you might feel some kind of way. I'm not down with this. I can't let this go. Well, if you want to heal, if
Right.
you want to kick that process off, then you're going to need to step up and let that go. Not condone it, but understand the healing behind the healing process and how it works when God is involved in that. So, thank you for sharing that. So, Tamara, I'm curious. You obviously you shared some very heavy stuff, and yeah, our storms can get heavy like that, and then sometimes our storms can just be day to day nuances, just lifing type stuff. Whether it's a random car trouble or an unexpected bill or whatever. But what I'm curious to know from you is when you do find yourself facing challenging times, whether it's something major or minor, what is it that you specifically like to do in terms of your routine, your regiment, that kind of works best for you when you find yourself? It's just one of them days and I'm up against something. What is that thing or series of things that you like to do that kind of helps you process in a healthy and productive way?
There's a few things that I actually like to do. Meditation is one, and worship. So I'm a worshiper. So I always go. I put on some nice worship music, and then I will actually lay, like just lay out
Mm-hmm.
and just worship God to find peace in the midst of the storm. And if I can't do that, like say I'm out and about, I can't do that, then there's someone in my corner that provides wisdom
Mm-hmm.
that I'll call. I believe that you need wise counsel in your life. Uh, Definitely beneficial, but I don't do a lot of talking. I'm
Mm-hmm.
more. I go into a place of silence because I need to hear if God is going to speak to me. And if I'm going through a challenging moment, the last thing I want to do is open my mouth.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I like that. I like that you highlight the importance of silence. Yes, we always talk about, as believers, the importance of prayer, and nothing wrong with that. Take it to God, tell him what's going on, what it is that you need to hear from him from. But a lot of times we miss the part about taking that time to be quiet so we can hear what he has to say. We either keep talking or we get to a point where we ask the prayer and then we follow up with telling God how to answer it. Inst- and he's like, "Well, I thought you came to me for the for the
Right.
advisement, for the wisdom here. You gonna tell me how I'm supposed to respond to you instead of just sitting back as you stated and just being still and letting him pour into you and tell you what it is that he feels that you need to know so that you can move forward in dealing with whatever that situation is that you have before you. So I think that's a key thing. And one thing, real quick, I want to jump back to from our last segment when you talked about, and I think this is very important to remind everybody of is when you stayed temporarily when you were staying with someone and you said I wanted that room where there was nothing in there. I love that you spoke about the need of not being, the importance of you not being so comfortable where you wouldn't be motivated to keep moving forward. You needed to have a certain level of discomfort. And the reason that stood out to me, I was just having a conversation with a good friend of mine about that very thing because it's oftentimes in those moments where we get too comfortable with life going on. I mean, don't get me wrong. God can bless you with a good job and money could be right and marriage and family and all those good things can be good. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there should always be a point, there should always be something in you that says, if things are just too comfortable, not so much that you should expect something to go wrong, but that you always want to you always want to continue to challenge yourself. You want to continue to stretch yourself in whatever way that God would have you to be stretched. So that way it allows you to keep your focus and your eyes on Him. Because it's when we get too comfortable, when we get too settled, that's when we tend to take our eyes off. That's when we tend to put our guards down, and that's when the enemy sees an opportunity to sneak in and mess with us. And sometimes God will allow that storm to come through because he recognizes that you've taken your eyes off of him. He's recognized that you've lost your focus, even if it's for a moment. So sometimes he's got to kind of ruffle things, a little bit, kind of shake the ground a little bit for you to say, "You remember me? Remember the guy over here who came through for you last time?" And so again, that that conversation of you saying, hey, I'm about staying still, less words, more listening, hearing from him, taking that opportunity to do so. So again, appreciate you sharing that. Such a powerful thing to for us all to remember, whether you're a believer or somebody that's fairly new to even considering God in your storms and how to navigate those challenges. So I just wanted to point that out. And so Tamara, when you think back to all of that you've gone through life, good, bad, or otherwise, if you had the opportunity to sit across the table from that younger Tamara, the Tamara who, before marriage, she started off, of course, failing in a lot of things, but still fighting through, waiting for that right time, for that right man to get married, to give herself to him and only him, and the different challenges of people that you thought were on your side, and they were scheming and doing some other things backhanded ways behind your back. When you think about all of those times and those moments, if you had a chance to share, if you could, I should say, offer up some words of encouragement, some words of advice to the younger Tamara, um, I'm curious to know what would you say to her, or even to our listeners who might be currently right now having, going through some similar situations with some things that you talked about, that betrayal, that struggle with forgiving, and but they're still hurting inside, and they're trying to move forward from it all, and they're feeling lost, they're feeling disturbed in their spirit. What would be your words of encouragement to them as well as to the younger Tamara?
That's a really good question, and it's kind of hard to answer. Um, I would definitely say, no matter what, trust God. Continue to trust God. I would say, if I had to talk to my younger self, though, it would be, don't hold back. Don't hold back, because there were moments where um I did hold back, like especially playing basketball, all those things. Like I held back instead of just giving it like everything I had.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some hesitation there sometimes, and I think it was more so of being afraid of greatness, being afraid of success.
Mm.
So I would tell my younger self, don't be afraid of greatness. Don't be afraid of success. Don't be afraid of wealth. Go after it. It's your birthright. Abundance belongs to you. So that is what I would tell my younger self.
Love that. Love that. And it kind of aligns with our. I don't know if you paid attention to our show title for this evening. Your episode is "Bring the Shift," and that's what you. Everything that you've been speaking about is about shifting. It's about being willing. Don't, like you said, just what you just said just now. Don't hold back. Bring it. Bring that shift. If I started out, maybe I started out struggling. I started out failing, but all along, I had what it took. I just needed to keep grinding that thing out. And when I realized, when that light bulb came on, when the click moment happened, bring it.
Right.
Don't make yourself small to make other people feel good, and don't run from the greatness, because and that's a very real thing. Sometimes we run from the greatness because we're concerned of the expectation that comes with it. That if
Right.
I excel at this level, whether it's in sports, whether it's in ministry, whether it's in whatever, then now people will hold me to that standard. And what if I fall short? Then will they disown me? Will I lose my impact, my influence with them? Those are always challenges and things that you might be faced with. But again, God expects you to do the best with what you have, give it your all, trust Him, and not worrying yourself about people pleasing, and worrying about gaining favor from those around us. What does the world say? Because at the end of the day, what's most important is, what does God say about it? Is He pleased with your effort? Is He pleased with your work? As long as I've checked that box with Him, then it don't really matter what everybody else think. Yeah, it's if you do like what I do, you're proud of me. That's the gravy on the top. That's the little extra cherry on top. But ultimately, I want to know that what I'm doing, how I'm conducting myself, how I'm carrying myself, the way I shift, the way I move, is that in alignment with how God has intended for me to be? And if I'm doing that, then I'm good, and that's enough. That's enough. So again, I think that's good advisement that you offer up, not only to your younger self, but even to our listeners who may currently be struggling right now with the things that they're dealing with. Remember that forgiveness piece, and remember that you got to keep fighting, keep, like you said, keep trusting God, and He's gonna deliver you through. He's gonna get you over that hump, and when He does, you bring it. You bring it in the middle of it, and you bring it at the end of it. It's a continuous bringing it throughout the whole process. Don't just, you ain't got to wait for anything, but except wait on Him to guide your steps, to guide your path. So thank you for sharing that. So Tamara, this has been an awesome conversation. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. Your story has been beyond phenomenal, beyond, I already anticipated this was going to be great, and you've exceeded those expectations, blessing me, blessing my listeners. So I'm so thankful that we were able to make this happen, and that you were shared so vulnerably, so transparently, so openly as you have, because your story is definitely something that we all can benefit from. Lots of gems, lots of nuggets that you dropped tonight, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate how God is using you accordingly. So. Thank you so much for that. But as is customary here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, before I let you go, we want to take the opportunity to love on you, to put you in the spotlight, to acknowledge all the things that you got going on and what you're doing. So if you would, please tell us, if you got anything personally and or professionally that's going on now or coming up. We want to know all about it. We want to love on you. We want to lift you up. We want to acknowledge that. We want to know how to stay connected and all of that. So what can people look forward to you? What you got going on, Tamara, that we need to be in the know about and keeping up with, and so that we can follow you well beyond this episode, and see how God is using you? What's going on that we need to celebrate?
Thank you so much. So there are several things. So like I said in the beginning, I am the founder and CEO of Increased Marketing and Consulting. So that's where we bring visions to reality through graphic design, brand strategy and development, business strategy and development, coaching and client representation. So I tend to help a lot of entrepreneurs get to six figures and multiple six figures, as well as coaches. So that's one of the things that I specialize with as a coach. Now, in 2025, the Lord has me doing what is called Cry and Heal. And this is where I coach people. I give them a 5-day experience, and I coach them and I help them either start their healing process, continue their healing process, or fully walk in their healing. That is actually already recorded. They're able to sow a seed and just receive that and go through the 5-day experience. I have what's coming up. I decided to choose me. That starts April 6th. This is a 12-week shift. It's actually a 12-week shift. And it's the beginning layer for me helping people actually walk in their healing for real. And so that's what I'm focusing on in 2025, helping as many people as I can truly heal so that they can hear God clearly. Because I believe from experience and just from the wisdom that God has given me, that hurt and unforgiveness clutters the ear to God. So it blocks what God is saying. So a lot of times people think they hear from God, but they're actually hearing from traumatic experiences
Mm,
and the hurt that they're holding on to. And so I want to help by being a vessel that God uses to remove that clutter so that they can heal properly and receive the blessing that God truly has for them so they can tap into their birthright, which is abundance.
love that. Love that. So if people want to follow you, connect with you, support what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Okay, awesome. So you can follow me on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Timera LaChae. Timera LaChae. My website is www.timeralachey.com or increaseglobal.net.
Awesome, awesome. So to my listeners, there you have it. This woman of God has dropped a lot of knowledge on you, and she's got a lot of works even in store now throughout 2025. Don't miss out. Take advantage of it. Tell other people about it. Connect with her accordingly, because God's favor is all over everything that she's doing right now. She is walking in her purpose, and this is definitely something to celebrate, to acknowledge, and love on her for. So, we're taking this opportunity to do just that. I pray nothing but God's covering and protection on you in every area that you're involved in, and I'm just excited to see what more He has for you, and know that you have an open invitation to come back on the podcast in the future anytime you want to, because it's definitely been a pleasure having you, and you've truly been a blessing to us today. So appreciate that.
Thank you so
And to
much.
Absolutely. And to my listeners, if you've enjoyed our broadcast today, if you like the stories that we've shared here, the impact that we're trying to have in this setting on this platform, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is all about. We're about encouraging, inspiring, uplifting, being vulnerable and transparent, sharing our stories, not because we got it all figured out and we do everything perfectly and correct, but just being open and honest with the fact that we all go through our struggles. We all go through our moments of adversity, our moments of challenge. Nobody is immune from that. But at the end of the day, there's a God who there's no problem, no challenge, no hurdle that's too big for him to handle. And if you don't currently have a relationship with God, I'm here to tell you that today is a mighty fine day to make that decision. He loves you. He wants nothing but the best for you. He wants to be in relationship with you. So if I'm speaking to you, again, today is a mighty fine day to make that happen. Not telling you something that we heard, telling you something that we know from personal experience firsthand. He is a way maker. He's a promise keeper. He will never let you down. He's the greatest gift you can ever receive. And you make that decision, it'll be the best move that you ever make. And God will bless you in so many ways, not in terms of just giving you the desires of your life, but equipping you to be a blessing to other people. So, with that said, remember here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight, keep depending upon God, keep leaning on Him for his understanding, His guidance, and His direction. Don't worry about if you don't have it all figured out, if you don't fully understand. Just know that He's perfect and He loves you unconditionally and wants nothing but the best for you. You can rely upon that. You can count on that. You can take that to the bank, and He's not going to lead you astray. And just watch Him do wonderful, and magnificent things in your life, and use you to be able to do the same in the lives of so many others. So until next time, you take care of yourselves. I look forward to seeing you again on our next broadcast. Have a great rest of your evening.